It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Welcome back to the channel. I'm Joe MMA 195, and today we'll be taking a look at some times that showboating went wrong in MMA. Douglas Lima versus Michael Venom Page. In May of 2019, Michael Page was set to face off against former Bellator welterweight champion Douglas Lima in a semi-final bout of the Bellator welterweight Grand Prix. Page was undefeated at the time and had become notorious for winning his fights in spectacular fashion.
The London shoot fighter screaming out Antonio, seriously, and there's a spinning kick. That is unbelievable.
Page is known to showboat a lot in his fights, and this flashy fight style of his caught the attention of many fans. However, many fans believed that Page wouldn't be able to get away with showboating against a former champ like Douglas Lima. When it came time for them to meet in the cage, Page came out fighting with his hands down, showboating as usual. But Page would come to regret this in the second round, as Lima caught him with a perfectly timed leg kick that knocked Page off balance, followed by a swift right hook and some heavy ground and pound that left Lima unconscious. Joe Harding versus Johan SEGAS. At BCMMA 18, the then featherweight champ Joe Harding was set to defend his belt against Johan SEGAS. Throughout the fight, Harding repeatedly danced around and taunted SEGAS, showing no respect for his skills. However, this backfired in the third round when Harding was caught with a brutal head kick while dancing around the cage.
He set it up by just waiting for Joe to do something.
And then there was some viciousness in the ground and pound that followed.
Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman.
Two questions. First of all, what is it like to kiss Anderson Silva? He has nice lips.
At UFC 162, the then middleweight champion Anderson the Spider Silva was set to defend his title against his toughest opponent yet in Chris Weidman. At the time, Silva was ranked as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, as he had easily ran through almost every opponent the UFC threw at him and seemed unstoppable.
Like we said, second to none.
This all changed on the night that Silva would fight Weidman. Throughout their fight, Silva repeatedly taunted Weidman by dropping his hands and daring him to throw a strike. Silva had used this tactic in many of his previous fights in order to bait his opponent into striking first. However, Silva's showboating seemed a bit reckless this time around. The showboating would backfire in the second round as Silva was caught with a left hook while his guard was down. The punch sent Silva crashing to the canvas as Weidman followed up with some heavy ground and pound, finishing Silva via knockout in one of the most devastating upsets in MMA history.
Here it is again. Left hook, and he pretends to be hurt, but this one hurts. Boom! On the chin. Anderson's hurt.
Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz.
So he put a frame out in front of him and I quickly snatched it and broke his wrist.
You got a scare little cheesy shot on my hand because he had to put you to sleep with your gi on.
His little
Shoot to the conference.
Because I'm a Don, and that's what Dons do.
You got put out with that thing.
Your whole suit, my socks were worth more than your whole suit you had on, you little bum. You broke.
At UFC 196, Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz were set to face off in a very short notice fight. McGregor had originally been scheduled to fight the then lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos. However, dos Anjos had to pull out of the fight due to an injury, and Nate Diaz was quickly picked as his replacement.
How do you feel about it?
Yeah, Conor McGregor, you're taking everything I work for, mother. I'm gonna fight your ass. You know what's the real fight? What's the real money fight? Is me, not these clowns that you already punked at the press conference. Don't no one want to see that. You know you beat them already. That's the easy fight. You want that real right here. Hey, and I'm not.
Unfortunately, we can't talk like that on Fox.
Diaz had only 1 week to prepare for his bout with McGregor and was expected to lose.
You're just praying you can survive.
Look at my lineup.
I can hear it in your voice. I can hear it in your words. You're just hoping to survive in there.
You'll be
That's
acting.
it.
When the two met in the cage, McGregor would seem to have the upper hand early in the fight, as he began picking Diaz apart and taunting him repeatedly. But as the fight went on, McGregor began to tire out, which allowed Diaz to gain the upper hand. Diaz would end up sinking in a rear naked choke, which forced McGregor to tap out in a very unexpected turn of events.
How's that feel? Hey, I'm not surprised.
Eric Silva versus Nordine Taleb. During the same event as McGregor versus Diaz, UFC welterweight Eric Silva faced off against Nordine Taleb. When the match began, Silva would decide to throw a cheap shot at Taleb, as he was trying to touch gloves. But karma would quickly strike in the second round as Taleb would land a brutal cross that knocked Silva out cold. Jonathan Ivey versus HIKARU Sato. In 2017, Jonathan Ivey faced off against HIKARU Sato at Pancrase 284. Jonathan Ivey is a fighter that is known to showboat a lot, but this has backfired on him on many occasions. The same would happen when Ivey faced Sato, as Ivey taunted him by doing the crane pose, only to get knocked out shortly after. Chris Leben versus Terry Martin. At UFC Fight Night 11, UFC veteran Chris Leben faced off against Terry Martin. Leben was known to be one of the most durable fighters in MMA. However, Terry Martin didn't seem to care as he aggressively pursued a knockout against Leben. The two fighters would go on to have an exciting back-and-forth war for nearly 3 rounds. But towards the end of the third round, Martin would stun Leben with a swift overhand right. At this moment, Martin would get too confident as he proceeded to drop his hands and taunt Leben. But this would backfire as Leben would almost immediately land a brutal left hook that knocked Martin out cold.
Chris Leben is out.
Bethe Corrêa versus Holly Holm. In 2017, Holm and Corrêa would face off at UFC Fight Night 111. Throughout the bout, Holm would get the better of Corrêa, as she easily outstruck her in a dominant performance. In the third round, a frustrated Corrêa would decide to taunt Holm, but this would backfire almost immediately, as Holm responded with a brutal head kick that knocked Corrêa out cold.
Oh, вот это хай-кик! Вот это хай-кик, и все закончено!
James Gallagher versus Ricky Bandejas. At Bellator 204, Conor McGregor's friend and training partner James Gallagher would face off against Ricky Bandejas. Like McGregor, Gallagher was a very arrogant fighter, who liked to trash talk and showboat a lot.
Get the fuck out of here! This is my country! Don't forget that.
When Gallagher met Bandejas in the cage, he immediately got in his face to taunt him before the fight had even begun. But once the fight started, Bandejas would immediately begin to pick Gallagher apart, outstriking him and dropping him multiple times. Bandejas would end up finishing Gallagher in the first round, delivering a satisfying dose of humble pie.
He goes out, referee stops the contest. That is a beautiful knockout victory for Ricky Bandejas.
Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz. After a long layoff from fighting due to a severe leg injury, Anderson Silva would return at UFC 183 to face off against Nick Diaz in Silva's first fight since his back-to-back losses to Chris Weidman. Throughout Silva's bout with Diaz, he fought more timidly than usual, as he constantly waited for Diaz to strike first. Diaz noticed this and repeatedly taunted Silva throughout the fight.
Who knows where Anderson's head is at?
But Silva would keep his composure and end up winning the fight via unanimous decision.
Anderson, the Spider!
Yes, take it in, fans.
Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like down below and subscribe for more MMA content.
My foot was a balloon. My foot was a balloon. You want to see it?